Welcome to New Possibilities. I speak truth to power without fear. So I'm going to wait a couple of minutes for people to join this live stream before I get started. And while we're waiting for people to join, I'm going to have a 1 minute moment of silence to honor the life of Representative John Lewis. As you all know, brother was a courageous soldier in the fight for social justice and civil rights in this country. So I'm going to take out time to acknowledge the brother by having a 1 minute moment of silence. So yeah, I just wanted to take out a moment of silence for the brother, the Honorable John Lewis, to recognize the brother. The brother passed away. He was, I think, 80 years old. As you all know, the brother was actively involved in the civil rights movement. He was one of the leaders in the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. He was one of the people who led the march in Selma, a march for voting rights. The brother faced the police dogs and the police batons and police oppression so that we could have civil rights in this country, the basic civil rights that we take for granted, rights like the right to vote. So I have to honor that brother, show the brother respect. And that's why we had a moment of silence for those people who are just tuning in. Shout out to John Pro, David Bowman, and Shawnee Queen. Thanks for tuning in. So what I'm going to do is summarize some things that occurred at the Ahmaud Arbery hearing. And the hearing, if I'm not mistaken, was yesterday. It wasn't too long ago. So I just wanted to briefly come on here and share my thoughts about the hearing. So you had an arraignment and you also had a bond hearing in the case. And as most people anticipated, Greg McMichael and his son, Travis McMichael, pleaded not guilty in the case. And, that was all that they were there for, is to enter their plea. They have pled not guilty. And then they also had a hearing with respect to the third suspect, William Bryan. And the hearing was a bond hearing. His attorney raised some other issues as well, filed a couple of motions. And I want to just talk about some of the motions that he filed. Like, one of the first things that was brought up in the particular case was the whole issue of people wearing masks in court and having messages on those masks. So defense counsel objected to the fact that there were some people that actually came into court or were likely to come into court with face masks that have messages on them. And he was complaining in particular about attorney Lee Merritt wearing a mask that had George Floyd's name on it. And so this particular attorney wanted to ban those kind of masks and, political messaging from the courtroom, period. Because he was under the impression that would have some kind of bias impact on the case. It would be prejudicial to his clients. So he raised this particular issue. And the judge noted that he didn't even notice the mask. The judge noted that, he's the trier of fact right now, and he didn't even know that there was a mask, and he would not be swayed by things like that at this point in the case. And it's my understanding that this may be some issue that will be taken up later once the case maybe goes to a trial, once it goes to the jury, rather, and you have a jury and the trial is started. At that point, the judge may reconsider that issue or address that issue. But at this point, the judge decided, well, we're not going to ban people from wearing masks with messages on them. But he did note that he won't allow any kind of disturbances in the courtroom and all that kind of stuff. So the court overruled the defense attorney's objection to people wearing masks in the courtroom. Another thing that came up was defense counsel had an objection to the fact that the original district attorney recused himself from the case. So the attorney was coming up with all these legal arguments as to why the original district attorney should remain on the case. And the judge basically rejected all those particular arguments, for a variety of reasons. I will post a link to the hearing in the description box when I get a chance to, so you all could check it out for yourself. The next thing they went into was the actual bond hearing. And during that hearing, and I'm going to look at some of my notes, I've been referring to my notes, but during that hearing, defense counsel brought up some issues that really weren't relevant to the key point in the case. Like when you're dealing with a bond hearing, this defense attorney was trying to basically litigate the case before it's even started, like the actual merits of the case before the case is actually started. And so this attorney came out off the gate by, trying to discredit the victim, trying to dehumanize the victim by bringing up, the victim's criminal conviction for shoplifting and some other charge or something dealing with him resisting arrest. He tried to bring up these particular issues to frame it as if these particular criminal violations in the past impacted Ahmaud Arbery's state of mind right now, today. Well, not today, but during that particular incident. So he was suggesting that, that Ahmaud Arbery was acting in a certain way based on his past criminal history, his history of resisting arrest and all this and that, according to this particular attorney. And then, the prosecution basically brought up the point that had no bearing on the case, on the issue of whether or not this man, this criminal, William Bryan, this accused criminal rather, should be able to be released on bond. Other issues that came up during that particular bond hearing was the fact that this man had no real property. He's unemployed. So this man didn't have any kind of finances that he could put on the line to secure a release. Like, usually somebody, when they are bonded out, usually they put up their house or some other property that they own. And then also they mentioned that, that this man, I think his ex-wife or something, lived abroad or had relatives abroad, and he had traveled abroad. And there was an issue about whether or not he would go abroad and try to jump bail and all that kind of stuff. So, that particular thing was brought up. And then another thing is defense counsel brought up the point that basically the case should be dismissed. He's saying that his client didn't have any kind of knowledge of any kind of criminal intent on the part of the McMichaels, so he couldn't possibly be accused of the crime of, felony murder and other offenses related in this case. And so the actual prosecution responded by bringing up some very compelling points to describe, just the nature of the crime and the reason why this man William Bryan poses a flight risk. So they went into the fact that he actually used his truck against a man who was running in the street. And for those people who are not familiar with this case, I'm just going to summarize some of the basic facts. You had this brother jogging in the neighborhood. You had these two white men assume that this brother was a burglar. These two white men claimed that this brother had been a burglary suspect and that there had been a series of burglaries in the neighborhood. So they decided to arrest him. They tried to do a citizen's arrest. So they had arms. One had a shotgun, the other one had a handgun, if I'm not mistaken. They got in their truck and they pursued this brother. And then William Bryan decided to pursue as well. He got in his truck and followed them and helped them pursue the brother Ahmaud Arbery. And while he was helping them pursue Ahmaud Arbery, he also had his camera on recording the incident. And, so a lot of people may not know all the facts, but this man, William Bryan, actually tried to, use his truck against the brother who was running in the street. He actually used his truck as a weapon against his brother. The prosecution described how he actually used his vehicle to strike Ahmaud Arbery. And there's a dent in the truck as a result of him striking Ahmaud Arbery. It also, the prosecution also pointed out, just bear with me a second. The prosecution also pointed out how Ahmaud Arbery's handprint was actually on the truck as well. And, this is not a situation where somebody was just filming. This guy actually used his truck to strike this brother, to injure this brother, and to pin this brother in so that these people could apprehend him and arrest him. And they talked about, the prosecution mentioned that this was a danger to the community. This kind of behavior was a danger to the community. Ahmaud Arbery was trapped. And again, the truck had a dent in it because the man used his truck to strike this brother. So the attorney was making the defense attorney was making a big deal about this man possibly being held for like 18 months before trial and all that kind of stuff. And one thing that's very important to point out, like one of the highlights of the particular hearing was the fact that they were able to get these text messages from William Bryan. And these text messages had all kinds of racist information on them. According to the prosecution, this man, William Bryan, actually had all these racist text messages. He had text messages that used the N-word. It said it was replete with racist statements and bigoted statements. So he used the N-word throughout his text messages. He referred to Black people as monkeys. In one point, the prosecution mentioned that this guy said he's working like a N-word today. All this kind of racist stuff was in his text message. So this is not some good person, like they're trying to present it like he's just somebody who just happened into this situation and was doing nothing wrong but recording and had no part in these alleged crimes. This is a man that had the same animus as the McMichaels. As you all heard in one of my prior videos, at the time, and that's something that I forgot to mention. So they pursued that brother, in this with their trucks, accusing him of being some burglary suspect. And the brother ended up getting in a confrontation with these people. Travis McMichael took out a shotgun and shot and killed this brother. And while this brother was dying, while he was breathing his last breath, Travis McMichael referred to that brother as the N-word. So you had these people with racial animus, man. You got the guy in the truck following them who's a racist that had all these racist text messages. You got the guy who shot and killed this brother who was a racist, referring to this brother as the N-word and stuff like that. And, it's a shame that you had some people saying this case has nothing to do with race, people like that ridiculous Candace Owens. But these people had animus. So the court ruled on this particular bond here. In this particular bond hearing, the court denied the bond. The court noted that William Bryan was a flight risk. The court noted that there were 2 other investigations with respect to William Bryan, and these investigations are investigations with the Georgia Bureau of Investigation and the federal government. I think they're investigating for possible hate crimes. And also they said that there was concern about the fact that this man is unemployed and he lacks any property. So for those reasons, the court denied him to be released on on bond and all that kind of stuff. And also the court is in the process of doing a scheduling order, which will set the trial date and all that kind of stuff, and other deadlines that are in the case. It seems like the trial is probably going to be some time from now, because of this COVID-19. But as there are developments in this case, I will be back on here to discuss those developments. And I want to thank you all for tuning in. So I'm going to see what you all have to say before I close out. So David Bowman says, sorry to hear about John Lewis's passing. Rest in peace, John Lewis. You will be greatly missed, but you won't be forgotten by those who love you. Yeah, and that's, that's something else. It's like there were rumors that he had passed away like a week ago or so, but, and then, now he's actually passed away. And, he was a legend, he was an icon, somebody that actually made a difference in this world. He was one of the top leaders at the March on Washington. He's one of the people who were instrumental in helping to get voting rights passed in this country. He was one of the freedom riders in this country to help desegregate transportation, bus transportation in this country. And then he served in Congress for many years. He earned the Medal of Freedom. President Barack Obama awarded him the Medal of Freedom. So this man was a distinguished man, somebody that deserves our respect, and I have nothing but respect for him, and my question is, like, who is going to continue the legacy of people like him and Elijah Cummings and others who have passed away? We need a new generation that's ready and able to take those spots in Congress and to, carry on where those brothers and sisters left off. And I hope to be one of those people someday. But yeah, I had to take off time to acknowledge the brother, John Lewis. So let's see what Renaissance Man is saying. Oh, he said that Renaissance Man 2008 said the 3rd suspect was arrested as being investigated for sex crimes. So we'll see if that comes up in court and is used against him. I didn't know about that. I didn't know he was being investigated for sex crimes. I'm going to have to look into that. That's interesting. So I'm going to do some more research on that. But as there are developments in this case, I will be back on here discussing those developments. And I'm really interested in hearing from you, people that are tuning in later. I really want to know, like, what do you think about these developments? What do you think about the direction of the case? So let's see, before I go, shout out to Def Rocker. Thanks for tuning in. Yeah, but I want to, thank you all for tuning in. I truly appreciate your support. Please or like the video, share the video, hit that notification bell so that you'll know when I post new content on here. And also, I want to let you all know that I'm probably going to post a video on my art channel, and I'll probably do it as a, I'll probably post a link and share it here on YouTube so that you all can click that link and check out my latest piece. I did a piece that's about the protests demanding justice for Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd, and also looking back on those past cases where there was no justice, like Trayvon Martin, Tamir Rice, Philando Castile, Eric Garner. So I hope that you all can check that out and tell me what you think about the piece. So I will post that as a separate link, once it's done. Hopefully I'll be able to do it today. So I want to thank y'all for tuning in. And also, I want to remind you, if there's subjects that you would like to hear me talk about, feel free to let me know what those subjects are. You can let me know right now, or you can just leave a comment to this particular video, letting me know, what things you think I should talk about. So John Pro says, do you think the judge will allow McMichael's past racist texts as evidence? If Ahmaud Arbery's history doesn't matter, why should the McMichaels? One of the big issues in this case is whether or not, this was based on race. Like that's one of the underlying issues in this case. Even though like it doesn't directly deal with murder, like it does deal with murder, but I think that, the main issue is whether or not they committed a crime when they killed this brother. That's the core issue. But one of the issues that are key to this particular case is the issue of race. And I think that it may it's possible that the judge may allow it into the case. But I'm sure defense counsel is going to vigorously fight that and say that it's prejudicial to his client and all that kind of stuff. So I'm sure they're going to do everything in their power to fight that. But it seems like it will be highly relevant in this case. And it seems like if the judge was so inclined not to allow that, it seems like, the judge wouldn't have allowed the prosecutor to make statements about those racist text messages during this bond hearing, even though that's separate from the issue of, the bond hearing is separate from the issue of whether or not, William Bryan committed a crime, committed felony murder and all that kind of stuff. So, so that may be why he allowed it in this particular hearing. And he's the judge. It's not a situation where there's like a jury at this point that can be swayed by this kind of information. So we'll see. We'll see. I can't, say with certainty one way or the other. But I think that it is relevant in this case because we know that race is the subtext to this entire case. In my opinion, this brother would not have been stopped or harassed or followed or any of that stuff if he wasn't a black man. One of the things that they kept making a big deal about was the fact that, that Ahmaud Arbery went into this vacant house and looked around and all that kind of stuff, a house that was under construction. And, they were making it seem like he was up to something. He was doing something suspicious. He was committing a burglary and all that kind of stuff. It turns out he didn't take anything from the house. It turns out that many other people had visited that house. But those other people that visited that house and looked around and all that kind of stuff, they weren't tracked down by these McMichaels or anybody else. They weren't followed and harassed and then gunned down like Ahmaud Arbery was. And many of them were not black. Many of those people that visited that house or who were in that neighborhood were not black. But because he was black, they automatically were suspicious of him. So because of that, they pursued him. They assumed that he was up to no good, just like Trayvon Martin. They assumed he was up to no good, that he was a criminal, a burglar, and all that kind of stuff. And they proceeded to follow this brother and hunt this brother down and kill this brother. As for the issue of his past record, that to me, that it is relevant as to whether or not he was committing a crime. So they may try to bring that in, the evidence of his past record of, whether or not he's to establish like whether or not he was in the process of committing the crime. But there are all kinds of rules of evidence. There may be a basis for trying to get that evidence out. And at the end of the day, that kind of evidence is not designed to discredit him. The fact of the matter is, when these people pursued this brother, they didn't know anything about his record or anything like that. They didn't pursue him because they did some research on this guy's background or anything like that, and they knew that he was convicted of X, Y, and Z in the past. No, they just assumed that because he was a black man in this white neighborhood that he was a burglar and that he was suspicious and all that kind of stuff. So we'll see what happened. I'm not going to make any predictions or anything like that. We just know that the prosecutor is probably going to fight that effort to get in that evidence about his past convictions. And we know that the defense is going to try to push for that stuff. And we know how damaging that stuff can be. We saw what happened to Trayvon Martin. How they were able to get just images, not even convictions. They had photographs of him. They were floating around the internet and all that kind of stuff. And I do believe that stuff tainted the view of the jury. When people have been criminalized, people are less likely to empathize with them. They are more likely to dehumanize them and have no concern about what happens to them. So they're able to paint this brother as some criminal, as some violent criminal. Then it's going to be easier for these people to get off. And I'm sure that that's going to be the strategy of defense counsel. But this situation is horrific, where race, this whole thing centers around. So I doubt that this case would go forward without some of that evidence being put into before the audience. I mean, before the jury, admitted into evidence and all that kind of stuff. I doubt that won't happen because it is relevant to some key issues in this case. Yeah, so those are some of my thoughts about this. So with that, I'm going to say peace and blessings, everyone. I want to thank you for tuning in. Again, subscribe to my channel if you're not subscribed. Hit that notification bell so that you'll know when I post content. And also leave your comments for those of you who are not on the live. I'm really interested in hearing from you. Peace and blessings, everyone. Have a great day.